Good morning. I'm waiting for a friend to call me back, so if you see that, I'm ready for you. But I thought I used the time in between to talk about energies and to talk about my work. Yesterday I had a call with my new mentor, and so we did talk, or I don't know, I just explained to her what I'm doing, or I talked about some of my experiences, and she was like, I can listen to that for hours. Why don't you talk about that more here on Instagram? And the thing is, so some people are afraid that nobody believes them or whatever, or because it's too spiritual and kind of quirky, or I don't know, whatever. I don't really know what their specific reasons are, and it might be different for everyone. So my reason is that I don't really know how to explain it, maybe. So I mean, on my homepage, which is soon available in English as well, I try to explain where I'm coming from and how I work. But I guess the thing is that by now I can't put it into a box like theta healing, vocal embodiment, yoga, or whatever, because it's, for me, all so similar and just different aspects of the same thing. And I guess the same thing is energy work and in understanding energies. And so I think I started understanding energies when I was maybe in my 20s and 20s, because every time I went home, like I lived in a different city, and every time I went home, I come home to a sick father and a difficult relationship with my mother. And it was, so I come from a quite wealthy family, so like not super rich, but we have everything we need, and enough to share and to really live a life without any, like, it never happened to me that my parents said like, oh no, we can't give you this new laptop or whatever, it was everything always there. So it was always a place of abundance. We have like a really nice big city house, like an old one with wooden and marble floor and a nice garden, like not very big, but we're like 10 minutes away from the city, and also like 1 minute walk away from the forest, like right on the edge of the forest. So I was really, could always go on holidays, there was never, like, it was always pure abundance in that material way. And I also experienced abundance in form of generosity of my father, because he was not just in a material way very generous with me, but also in a appreciating way, that he appreciated me and that he let me be who I wanted to be. And when he got sicker and sicker, it was really hard for me to watch. Like, I think what impressed me most was his like will to live and his joy. Like, so he loved living, and that's why he wanted to keep living, and he loved the people in his life, like genuinely. He would like cry, when he saw me, or when his best friend would surprise him or whatever, like literally once I surprised him for his birthday and I went to Greek. He didn't expect me, and the entire day, every time he looked at me, he started crying. This is like, I mean, I don't know, it's hard to explain what I had, the kind of relationship I had with my dad, but it was just pure love. I never had this love in that extent again, ever before or ever after, Just because, you know, he loved me from my birth, like from the moment that my mom told him that she's pregnant with me. When she tells me like how his reaction was, you know, it's like she said she never knew that he would be so happy to have a child, that his wish to have a child would be so strong. And one of my mentors, who's working with a lot of energy, and even like I went to a medium once, and the woman who described the energies she feels between me and my dad, she started crying. That was insane. And yeah, my mentor, she said also, like, you know, as like the soul of my dad waited all his life that I would come into his life, and then he was already sick with Parkinson, and he was 43 years old, and then my mom got pregnant with me. And at that point, they had been for more than 10 years already in a relationship, you know. So they have never talked about it. My mom had a miscarriage before, but she never told my dad about the miscarriage. So she didn't even tell her own mother about the miscarriage. So they had been in this relationship. Like, you know, when you look at this from modern healthy standards, this is so sick. This is so sad, you know, that you can't talk to people about it. And I understand the story why she didn't. I know about it, and it's like not what I want to talk about here, but it actually has to do with the Caribbean as well, because, well, okay, come on, I'll tell the story. So my mom got pregnant in the first time when my dad was here in the Caribbean. So like she got pregnant from him, but then he left to the Caribbean, and at that time it was really hard to phone someone. Like the connection was always really bad, like the quality, and it. So she thought she wants to tell my dad in person, also because you have to wait 3 months to make sure that it's like actually all that, you know. And then she thought, when he's coming back from the Caribbean, then I'll tell him. And then she lost the child within this very first few months, and she did tell him. Oh yeah, she did tell him about the miscarriage then, but she felt that for him it didn't seem so terrible, because he didn't hear first like, oh, I'm becoming a father, you know. He just heard, oh yeah, you're not becoming a father. And it was like he didn't show maybe also his emotions so much. Maybe he tried to be strong for her, or I don't know, you know. But so she figured that maybe he doesn't even want children that much. And then she got pregnant with me over like 10 years later, and he was so excited and so happy about it. And that's when she realized how much he did want to have a child, and just never dared to speak about it. And so I was there then, and up until really, like, I saw him a few days before he died, and we spent like a very beautiful day also together, a day before that or 2 days before that. And he was so tender, and it was so close, you know. And so I never had someone who loved me in that length, you know, in that unconditionally, and that, I don't know. And so there was a lot of abundance in my family, but there was also a lot of difficulties in my family. And for instance, I'm an only child, and my parents always told me that I have to become independent very quickly, because they won't be around long. And so I had just one grandmother to which I had like a very close relationship, and she died when I was 12. And I really always thought, like, you know, when my parents die, then I'm completely alone in this world. And that was such a scary feeling. And when my dad got sicker, he often fell, and like half a year before he actually died, and he died from something else. Like, we think it might be something like a heart attack that he had at night, but which might be caused because of all the medication he had to take, and about how stressful it was for him to live with this illness. But so I had this conversation with my dad, because he always wanted to walk into the city or like take a taxi or whatever, but then walk around the city by himself. And since he kept falling more and more, he also had some incidences where he had to be in hospital or hospitalized and seen by a doctor, and he would have broken his ribs, or like have some blood here, or a broken finger, or whatever. It was like really difficult. So my mom always said she doesn't want him to go into the city alone, and he said, well, I want to decide for myself. He felt because of his sickness that he wasn't taken serious anymore, and he was like, hey, I can decide for myself. I'm a grown-up person if I want to go to the city or not. He felt like imprisoned and like completely reliable on others. And so I had this conversation with him, and I tried to explain to him that we're just so afraid of him or about losing him. And then he said to me, well, but if I'm staying at home, and can't do the things that I love anymore, then I'd rather die. It's like better for me to go out and live my life. And if I fall or if I die, then at least I have lived. And when he said that to me, I completely understand that, right? And I always wonder how people make that to cry on Instagram, but here I am. So, I just wanted all the best for him, because I loved him so much, and because he always wanted all the best for me. And he was such an inspiration to me with this courage, with this faith also, because he wasn't afraid to die in a way, even though he didn't want it to die, and but maybe you can imagine how difficult it was for me to be around my father and never really know if this would be the last time, maybe. So I guess his love enabled me to feel everything, like the highs and the lows. And I remember even when I was a child, like I sometimes became very furious. And my anger was something I was a long time ashamed of, because I was because I was often like in my education, like my parents would often maßregeln, or what's the English word, to judge me or to like discipline me for my anger and tell me that it's like not polite to be angry, or that it's not helpful or whatever, and or disrespectful, or even worse, like hurtful to other people. And so I felt this anger, and I felt that I had to release it somehow. And then I knew that my parents, especially my mother, didn't like that anger and couldn't deal with that anger well. So I always reflected this anger very, very carefully. And I remember that I told everyone, listen, I'd rather express my feelings than get a cancerous, Geschwür in my belly. I always said that. And I was like really... So what I did with that was that I analyzed it and asked myself. So when I noticed that it was pride, I didn't know the word ego at that point, in my life, or I never used it. And I didn't view it from a spiritual perspective. But I knew the word pride, and I knew that with pride you can hurt yourself a lot when it's in your own way, between you and your own good, you and your own well-being. And I had to deal a lot with pride in my younger childhood and in my early teens maybe. And sometimes when I had not illuminated, ausgeschlossen, all the potential pride that was in the way, there was something else. And this feeling that I had, that I was feeling, that was there too, was a feeling of justice or injustice. So whenever I felt fairly treated, then I would be at peace. But when there was unfairness, that was the only time in my life, like I didn't cry much as a child, which is a completely different story, also kind of interesting, or very educative and teaching. But the only reason when I had to cry, I couldn't even control it, was when I felt unfairly treated. And today I know that anger only comes up when somebody crosses a boundary that you have set, and when you feel like you are in danger. So it's like a protecting mechanism, right? And it accumulates all the power that we have, all the strength. It makes us feel alert. It makes us feel ready to fight, you know? And I realized that my anger, so I realized that maybe 5 years ago or something like that, not very long, that actually in my mediation training, which is so interesting because the justice-injustice theme carried me to my law studies, I guess, which is also like my life card in the tarot, justice and injustice. So like, you know, everything is so linked and just makes so much sense. So I understood that my anger has protected me, and that my anger kind of saved my life, because what I experienced as a child didn't look like abuse in form of violence, like physical violence. Well, it depends a little bit how you define that physical violence also, but it was, I'd never had like marks or something that was visible from the outside, you know. But, you know, I had to eat whatever came, you know, and I had to, like, there were like a lot of things that had also physical effect on me, and I actually got sick from it. Like I had like really bad migraines and other illnesses or sicknesses related to my grinding. My teeth were like, or still are, it's a process to repair them because they're like broken kind of, and yeah, a lot of tiredness and yeah, maybe also the cyst, you know, like, so I had a lot of like bigger things that weren't like visible from the outside, you know. Everybody always sees me and thinks like, oh, you look so relaxed, and yeah, I don't know how I'm doing that, you know. I'm not even putting makeup on, but it's like, I think it's just my resilience that I had to develop over time. And what I wanted to say with that story is that every time I came home to my parents, I felt this immense energy shift to my normal life. So I started observing energies around me in general more and more consciously. Plus I also started my yoga path with like 20 something. And so I got more and more educated about these kind of concepts. And as more I learned about all of that, I understood that actually, even as a young child, I was already able to unconsciously read the energies in the room very, very well, because I needed it to survive. So all of that has kind of given me certain abilities that I needed to learn to direct. And I realized when I started Lomi massages, or when I started to give or started to facilitate Lomi massages, I don't know what's the perfect, which one is better, but so my English speaking friends, you can give me please feedback. I'm curious to know which would be the proper way to say it. So what I want to say is, I noticed how easy it was to follow my intuition. And I was curious, I was like in an observer perspective and asked myself, like, what are you doing? Like, how do you know? And I can't tell you how I know. So that's the thing. And I also don't think that when I do something intuitively that I actually decide myself how or why I'm doing it. I think it's when I'm kind of connected and aligned with the universe. And it's like when I'm just aligned also with my human design profile, you know, when there are no karmic weight, when there is no karmic weight on my decision, you know, when it's just like I'm acting from a place of, I want to say love, but it's not even that strong. It's just like devotion. It's not even devotion. It's actually just detachment. So not being attached to the outcome. And from a place of unity. So it's not like always that intense as love might feel sometimes. But I also think that it is a form of love, and that love just sometimes feels not so exciting and big. It's just like there, and that's something some people haven't noticed for themselves yet, and think that the love then might be gone because it has transformed, or the experience of love has transformed. So it's like a place where I'm not separated from others, where I understand that we are all interconnected. So maybe a place of interconnectedness, or the awareness around interconnectedness. And it's a feeling that you learn to recognize, like a voice of a friend, of a close friend. And sometimes you might think, is it this? Is it him? No, it's not him, you know? Sometimes you think like, oh yeah, that's him. And it might be another person, but it's the same frequency of the voice. You know, it doesn't matter from whom this feeling comes, honestly. Or because actually one of my teachers once explained to me that it actually doesn't come like from anyone. It's just there, and we reflect it. So two things more or less happen parallel. So first I had a plant ceremony session with mushrooms, and I sang a lot in that session, and I had been singing in other ceremonies as well, but that was something else. It was just different. And I noticed how I absorbed the energies around me in the room, and transformed them within me and breathed them out in love. And actually it's something I learned from another shaman. We had like a Tipisquit session, beautiful outdoors. It was really nice. It was a man from Mexico who came to Germany, and he sang Todo es amor, and I was throwing up air. So there was like, it wasn't actually throwing up, it was more like, I don't know the English word for it. I will enter it here. So it's getting loud here. Ooh, let me get inside. So I realized that there were demons inside of me, but because he was singing todo es amor, I realized that these demons were just like those feelings like anger or, I don't know, maybe even jealousy or like all the sins, embarrassment, shame, all these like sad emotions, pain, whatever, that had protected me. Fear, all these kind of emotions. And then I suddenly could see them with different eyes, and I was able to embrace them. And I didn't want to, so the purging stopped. So I felt that I don't have to spit them out anymore because I was able to integrate them. So it was really, really interesting. And that was like about 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago. And then last year in April, I had this mushroom ceremony, and I wasn't afraid of any of the energies in the room. It was more like a play, I would like suck them in and then breathe them out, and like I don't know, it was immense, it was intense. I don't know what happened with me then. And actually I got shamed for that later a little bit. And I felt afterwards like super insecure. Because the facilitators of the retreat, two of them were like, I got the impression as if they thought that I would work with black magic, or that I would be not confident, able enough to differentiate between good and bad energies, or that that when we are all channels, when we take the medicine, that they were afraid that I would let in dark energies into our space. And the thing is that I don't believe in dark energies. Like, I do believe there is light and dark, yes, but light and dark, like my shaman, like my teacher, which I love most, or my first teacher, he explained to me that actually dark is just a form of light. Like when you imagine like a blue scale, right, from dark blue to light blue, you would say it's all blue, it's just dark blue and light blue. And similar, it's with that, it's just like a different form. It's all water, no matter if you have ice or dust, like clouds, like the steam and whatever, or gas. And it's still the same thing. And when they said, you could have let in dark energies, first of all, I didn't do anything, which maybe was their problem, that they would have wanted me to be more, that's the thing, when you're just open, also, of course, everything can come in. I understand that thinking of them, and when you are not a clear channel, so when we are not like connected to the divine in that moment, then the translation within ourselves might be different than the translation when we are just a clear channel and it just can go through us. And then I don't know what I'm doing, that's what I'm saying, I just let it rinse through myself, and I alchemize it kind of, and like as if ice cubes would fall in, and then I melt it, and then I spit out water or steam, and that's what I do through staying in this feeling, which is like this voice of a friend, which I recognize that this is my friendship to the universe, my partnership. And when I feel this feeling, then I know that I can trust that what transforms through me is the right thing that is needed. And the tools that I have gathered along the way, that are tools that kept my nervous system regulated and which helped me to walk this path without damage, without new trauma, with healing parts that were hurt, And when I work with people, I choose sometimes these specific tools, like if someone wants a theta session, they get a theta session. If someone wants a vocal embodiment session, they get a vocal embodiment session, of course. But for me, there's not a clear line between one technique and the other. You can work with your voice in theta healing, and you can implement what I've learned in theta healing into vocal embodiment, for instance, and the philosophy behind both resembles the philosophy of yoga completely. So there are like so many interconnections. And when we are in this state of interconnectedness, it also doesn't matter where we get our informations from. They are just there, and they just feel like this interconnectedness. And I try to explain that to people. It's like when you close a tube, like a toothpaste or something, and you have the cap, and it doesn't really, you try to screw it, but it doesn't really closes. Then it's the feeling of for me it's a feeling of impatience, and like this impatience is an angry impatience. It's like, why? I don't want like this, But then for some people, I think for generators, because I'm a manifestor, that's how I explain it to myself, that I have that feeling. I think for generators would be maybe rather frustrating. Like maybe they're not impatient, they know they have all the time in the world because they have generators, they have energy to the max, constantly. They're just like frustrated because it doesn't, it's not following their joy. They just want to close that damn toothpaste, And then, for projectors, it probably would be bitterness, like not feeling good enough. Why am I the person who's not able to, I don't know what bitterness in that extent feels like. Because for me, the most distinct emotion or sensation that I can feel is anger, And reflectors, I don't know. As I said, I'm not a human design expert. So, but I think it's interesting to see the parallels again, between not only theta and vocal embodiment, but also a theta and vocal embodiment, but also human design and everything. Everything is interconnected. We can go on and on and on like that. And den Faden wieder verloren. I lost my rope. The red whatever. Wait. I'm back on track. I learned to recognize this feeling, the negative one, but also the one when I am aligned with myself, the feeling when I feel at peace. And that's for me feels like when I close this toothpaste, when I put the cap on, when I screw it, and just close it in 1 second. Or there are other locks, if it's a magnetic lock or something, and it just clicks, and you don't have